So continuing on with my process of reading and note-taking, moving on to page 4 here. So this is actually still a continuation of accessing budgetary information. So I've summarized the reading information that was here down to here. So these notes were useful to me. They made sense to me. They seem like things that I would want to record down there to sort of get them embedded into my brain a little bit. So financial info determines and monitors future action and current performance, and we need good systems to collect and analyze timely and useful data and have trained personnel to do that. Our financial systems, or we need to have a financial system that will capture things such as our costs, our operations, assets, GST, accounts, etc., and manage and monitor cash flow, productivity, and deal with and mitigate or avoid problems. And then I think I might have forgotten to put a few page numbers in, but if I skip over to the next page, budget processing types and methodologies. So that's us over here, which is page 5. And these are the notes that I took from that. So this is a slightly interactive page, not much going on there. And I've just taken a few basic notes here saying, identifying that the budgets, there's just not such a thing as one budget. There's budgets can take several forms. They can cover different periods of time depending on what the purpose of the budget actually was. But one of the points that's raised is that there's two common types of budgets that are spoken about, which are fixed and flexible, which are dealt with in this little interactive slide area here. So I've just tried to summarize that information down to a couple of sentences of information, and it was good. It did make it very clear where one would be used and one wouldn't. So a fixed budget is based on historical figures that we already have, and they're making a budget based on those figures and certain predictions that we're going to be working on. And some of the other notes that were made here was, and actually this reminds me, one of the points was that I had on this, I wasn't actually overly happy with the explanation here. So I decided to look a bit further for information that would help me with this. So I ended up on Google for that. And this is where I got some of these other bits of information, which just cleared it up in my mind, or explained it to me a bit better about what fixed and flexible budgets were. You might have found the information here completely fine, but I needed more. So the fixed style of budget asks, what did we do? What will we change? And it allows us to set goals for a budget period. It's a good budget if you've got a high degree of certainty with what's going on. Which then brings us on to the next sort of budget, a flexible budget or a flex budget. And that allows for adjustments based on changing conditions. So you'd use a flexible budget where you are in that sort of environment where things are changing rapidly or surprises are coming up. So both styles of budgets are completely valid, but you'll use different ones at different times. So it's actually well worth doing a bit more of a read on Google as well. So I think at that point I would have then moved on to the next page, and again just forgot to make a little note for myself where that information's from. And this next page was basically had a number of slides there that describe preparing budgets and financial reports. So it goes through a number of little parts here which I've written down for myself. So I need to know what data there is to collect, the source that I'm getting that information from, making sure that that is a valid source, an up-to-date source, classifying things into accounting codes, and that'll be determined by your organization and the accounting codes that they use. I'll need to, when I'm preparing budgets, I'll need to know how to calculate costs, profit and loss, break-even analysis. And that's a bit of a red flag, that one, that they are actual practical skills that you're going to need to be able to demonstrate that you can prepare and read budgets with that information. I'll come back to that point in just a second. A couple other points that were there that when I'm preparing budgets, I need to assess and report on the data analysis from those budgets, and I need to keep them accurate and make sure they're secured. Important to mention that budgets should be achievable and realistic, and the good way to tell that is have a look at last year's budget. If the figures you're using for this year's budget are several 100% in the wrong direction, well, that's probably not achievable and realistic, and you need to base things quite often on historical data. Coming back to the point I wanted to raise here about things like when you're preparing a budget, you'll need to be able to calculate cost, profit and loss, break even, and a few other style of spreadsheets or budgeting. As you go through the study here for this unit and just about any other unit, the bulk of the work that you're doing here is theory-based work, which will, when you look at it, seem a bit challenging, because we should be able to show that we can manage budgets and financial plans. Answering all the questions in the world, that's nice for theory, but it doesn't show that you can actually read a profit and loss sheet or a break-even analysis. So just be aware that yes, you do need to go through, do all this theory work, you need to go through, answer all your formative and summative questions, but you will also need to deal with the observation report. And just to actually just open that quickly in another tab. So for example, for this particular unit, there are 6 different observational things. These are practical demonstrations that you'll need to show us, that we'll need to observe that you can do these things. So I'm just going to cut to the chase. That's all background information. What this first observational check will need to show is that you can show us that you can read and check calculations, that you have attended or can attend finance meetings, and that you can prepare and update a budget to present to a meeting. That's big stuff. And throughout your entire lot of reading, you won't actually need to do that as such. It'll certainly be spoken about at length, but there's no point there where you do a formative or summative assessment where you create a budget. So be very careful there, thinking that you're doing all wonderful by completing your formative and summative assessments. There's a very important part to every unit you do, which will be the observational and practical side. And you'll be provided with more information about that as time goes by. So anyhow, back to the theory side of things. I think we're on to the next slide here. New heading. Again, I forgot to put in the page number, so I'll just pop that in now. Again, I'm putting in these page numbers because I think when I get to the questions, I'll be referring back to my note taking, not referring back to the website itself. But I might get to my note taking and think, oh, the notes I took there were a bit sparse, so I want to refresh my memory exactly where did I take those notes from, so I could then refer back to the website to get better detailed information. Anyhow, business planning. So I've taken a few notes here based on the reading that was there, and some of the notes were that there's lots of different types of planning that happens within business planning, financial plans, business investment, strategic marketing, and more and more. The plans make the vision possible. So the heads of the company will create a vision for the company on where they're going, and the plans can actually set that into action. And plans will need to use quantitative and qualitative data. So your quantitative data, I'd actually made a little note here that I need to research that a bit more, which I haven't done at the moment. But the quantitative information, and like magic, my research suddenly appears. So quantitative information is numbers-based information that we might find from our KPIs that we set, for example. Qualitative information or qualitative data is gained from observation, discussion, surveys, reports. So it's less numbers-based, but are both very valid forms of data that we will need to use for our various business planning processes. Now, then the notes go on to talk about financial plans, and so financial plans, amongst other things, will identify assets, liabilities, financial objectives, and risk tolerance. And they will summarize the organization vision, goals, operational and financial actions to meet those goals. And they will need both internal and externally gathered data. The internal data can come from areas such as financial data, operational data, and performance records. And our external data can come from market projections, trends, political or social change. And that data will determine the operating requirements in terms of finance and resources. So that's what I'd gleaned from this area of reading. Then moving on to page 8. There were a couple of little headings there, and so I'd summarized as far as reports and communication goes. Our accounting system, our financial system, will provide things like profit and loss, balance sheet, revenues, expenditures, debtor creditors, cash flow, and so once again, these are terms and techniques that you'll need to become proficient in. And also, there was some discussion of contingencies as far as your planning goes. So that's going to be very important. So if there's some surprise that comes up or something that was unplanned, you have hopefully had enough foresight to make a contingency plan for such an occurrence. So it's your ability to react to that unexpected change. There's a couple of points here of types of changes or surprises that might come up that you should think about having contingency plans for. And here are perhaps some of the contingencies you could come up with. Now, and let's see, also this mention here of risk identification with regards to how you, when you're thinking about surprises or unexpected change, there's certain recognized practices you can follow for risk identification, and then the outcomes of that will be some plans on perhaps diversifying outcomes, increasing recycle reuse, getting cheaper materials, and so on. It's important to mention that contingency planning should be something that's done ahead of time rather than after the problem has already occurred, rather than a reaction. So there's a couple of pages there of information on the contingencies. Okay, so that now prepares me for having a bit of a stab at the actual formative assessments, the activities and the questions within those activities, and to make a start on that. So I'll deal with that in the next video, and we'll see how successful my initial note taking has been with letting me provide answers to these activity questions.